Now is the time to hear from our youth who are driving the SDG ambition with great vigor and fervor. With this, we open our plenary session 2, and it's titled on Youth-centric Approaches for Achieving SDGs. We have a great panel filled with youngsters who are going to put forward their views. Let me introduce the panel first. We have Nikhil Shetty, co-founder and director, Upkram Educational Foundation; Sanjana Gupta, founder and executive director, Rangeen Khirki; Jimmy Thangjam, founder, Tweak Learning TM; Richa Gupta, co-founder and co-CEO, Labhya Foundation. This session is being moderated by Anandamai Singh, Youth Engagement Officer, Yuva at UNICEF. And we have the opening remarks by Duvarka Shriram, Chief of Yuva and Partnerships at UNICEF. We also would like to mention that we have a special fireside chat by BVR Mohan Reddy, founder, chairman and board member, signed and member, Yuva Advisory Board. I would like to hand over the baton to Anandamai Singh for taking this forward and starting with opening remarks from D. Sriram. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Richa. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today with our incredible youth entrepreneurs, as well as Ms. Dwarka Shriram and Mr. Reddy, who have really been championing youth centricity in everything that we do. I won't take a lot of time before handing it over to Dwarka, but really quickly just want to take this moment to recognize that it is a really important conversation that we will be having today, and it's really, I'm very excited to be inspired by the young people who have been leading a lot of important work when it comes to furthering SDGs. But I'll hand it over to Dwarka now so she can kind of set context for this conversation.
Thank you so much, Anandamai. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today for this important discussion on youth-centric approaches to furthering the SDGs. I'd like to extend a special thank you to Mr. Reddy and the youth entrepreneurs who will be part of the panel, as well as colleagues from across the UN and private sector joining us today. India enjoys the world's largest youth population, with immense potential to catalyze positive change. However, at times, young people are often excluded from information channels and decision-making spaces relevant for their future. This is because they're often seen as beneficiaries in the receiving end of protection, resources, and services, when they should be treated as equal partners with the potential and expertise to lead the positive change we're collectively working towards. The right to participate and contribute to decisions that affect them is, in fact, enshrined in Article 12 and 13 of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child. That's why when Yuva, Generation Unlimited in India was launched in 2019, we were determined to bring together players from across the sectors and ensure that the voices and needs of young people are guiding our priorities. As a matter of fact, our name Yuva in itself was chosen by the youth representatives from our ecosystem. Now, 2 years since our launch, our understanding and engagement with young people has grown immensely. Through the formation of our youth advisory, rollout of Yuva's Innovations Challenge, the Young Warrior Movement as part of the COVID-19 response, and other volunteering and engagement initiatives, we have been fortunate enough to not only listen to, but work with the youth of this country to further the development agendas. Our youth advisors have partnered with us to strengthen and amplify our tools and mission, holding us firm on our mandates of equity and youth centricity. For example, during the rollout of the Youth Innovations Challenge, we witnessed the creativity, empathy, and passion of young entrepreneurs in solving problems within their communities with a focus on sustainability and equity. By launching the Young Warrior Movement, we supported the leadership of nearly 5 million young people in safeguarding the nation during the devastating second wave by facilitating vaccine uptake, promoting COVID-appropriate behavior, and serving on the front line. We have been fortunate enough to be inspired and learn from the young people we have directly worked with, especially when it comes to creating knowledge products and mechanisms for equal partnerships. Our youth advisory, for example, sits with our senior leadership on our advisory board and has consistently pushed us to be thoughtful and inclusive in our tools and strategy. The winners of our Youth Innovation Challenge have been supported with close mentorship and funding to create assets for their community and scale up their production of their venture. The voices of young warriors were amplified on social and traditional media, and the actions of them were consolidated in a narrative book, Amplify the Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports. Throughout all this engagement, we as Yuva realize that it's important to support the leadership of young people by providing them with platforms to amplify their experiences and vision for the world, as well as support their capacity building so that they can participate more effectively in the governance, strategy, and implementation of the development agendas. That being said, the essential work of centering young people's leadership in furthering the SDGs cannot be done without the support of the public and private sector. That is why it's heartening to see that more and more players across the sectors are trying in earnest to bring young people to decision-making spaces and nurturing their capacities. So they're not just enacting development agendas, but shaping and leading them so we can truly operationalize a public-private youth partnership platform towards the SDG 2030. Thank you so much for having me. I look forward to hearing from the young entrepreneurs present today, as well as, of course, Mr. Reddy, on how we can more effectively partner with young people to move the needle on the SDGs. I'll now hand it over to the UNGCNI team and Anand Mai to play a video from Yuva. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dwarka, for your setting the context for this very, very important and very, very radical conversation that we're going to be having today. Can I request the technical team to play the video?
India has more than 300 million young people aged 10 to 24, with the potential to transform the country and the world at large. But young people continue to be excluded from information, opportunities, and decision-making spaces. That's why Yuva created YPAD, our Young People's Action Team. Yuva, or Generation Unlimited India, is a multi-stakeholder platform that aims to accelerate young people's learning, skilling, leadership, employment, and entrepreneurial pathways. We are committed to meaningfully including young people across all levels of governance and decision-making. Yuva's Young People's Action Team, or YPAD, comprises 41 highly motivated young people aged 10 to 24. They shape our priorities to address young people's access to resources, education, employment, skill development, and social justice. Each YPAD member embodies courage, empathy, and grit. Our YPAD enjoys diversity across gender, ability, citizenship, and socio-economic backgrounds, ensuring that the voices and needs of the most marginalized are represented. To advance their leadership capabilities, Yuva connected the YPAD to external experts, tools, resources, and mentors. We tried to make Yuva a safe and affirming space for YPADs and created a grievance redressal mechanism for them.
In return, YPAD members were asked to uphold the values of tolerance, partnership, mutual respect, promote inclusivity and diversity.
Yuva also connected us to national and global state-speaking opportunities.
In just 1 year, YPAD reached 3.6 million plus young people,
advocating for gender equality, mental health, climate change, equity in EdTech, and youth-led COVID-19 action.
YPAD steered Yuva in engaging the most marginalized young people and incentivizing their civic engagement.
We ensured the relevance of Yuva's tools across diverse constituencies.
We also took the learning from Yuva back to our community and led 18 projects on gender, 21st century skill development, disability rights, the constitution, and climate change.
For the last 1 year, the Young People's Action Team has been our conscious keeper, consistently holding us accountable to our core values of equity and youth-centered programming. With YPAD guiding as leaders within Yuva, we are looking forward to collaborating with them and their networks more extensively. We are confident that Yuva will contribute much more effectively to India and the world's progress with YPAD by our side. We encourage more and more organizations such as government, private sector, civil society organizations, and UN agencies to integrate and engage with young people by investing in them and giving them a seat at the decision-making table. This way, you not only make sure that your solutions are relevant to the young people, but you can also support them to become ambassadors of social change and innovations, as well as drivers of economic development. The time to support and nurture young India is now. The need is urgent, and the stakes could not be higher. Our collective future depends on it.
Great. Thank you so much. That was just a glimpse of what we at Yuva mean when we say we want to center the voices of young people in everything that we do. But in the coming year, and hopefully as we grow and as our partners grow, we will try our best to center and meaningfully partner with young people more and more and nurture their leadership capabilities so that we are really just letting them take the charge when it comes to furthering development agendas. But for now, I'm really excited to hear from our incredible youth entrepreneurs who will be sharing their journeys and outlining some key asks that they have from the private sector as well as the government when it comes to supporting young entrepreneurs like them. Our first young panelist is Nikhil Shetty, who is the co-founder and director of Upkram Educational Foundation. And he has a BA in information science and was a software engineer before quitting his job to join the Azim Premji Foundation Fellowship in Bageshwar, Uttarakhand. In his time with the fellowship, he came across children who were first-generation learners, their challenges in the formal spaces, helped him understand how a public school is perceived by a larger society. And based on this experience, in 2018, he found Upkram Educational Foundation, which was focused on developing conducive spaces to strengthen the literacy and foundational language abilities of children from underserved communities in Sonbhadra and Uttar Pradesh, to ultimately improve their learning and life outcomes. He is a strong and passionate advocate of creating a conducive learning environment for children and believes that through education, intergeneration poverty can be alleviated. Handing it over now to Nikhil.
Thank you, Anandmai. That's a generous introduction. Hello, everyone. I'm Nikhil, co-founder of Upkram Education Foundation. Thank you for this opportunity. Growing up in a family where my father worked for a public sector bank, we had to move every couple of years. That took me to vastly different landscapes across India. From drought-hit districts of rural Karnataka, where access to potable water was largely through community tankers, to the often conflict-ridden areas in the northeast, where schools being protected by border security force Jawans was a norm, and political violence an unfortunate part of my life. It was 30 years ago, and yet those vivid memories keep me grounded to this day. Looking back, I feel fortunate that irrespective of whether we were in underdeveloped villages or the metropolises, my family always took enrolling me to the best possible schools as a priority. Due to that, I got access to quality resources, wonderful peers, and optimistic educators. But this is a very skewed privilege, and that is a discomfort even today I share. Therefore, I strongly advocate for developing conducive learning spaces and believe quality education can play a significant role in elevating intergenerational poverty. Intending to bring joyful learnings to classrooms, I started as a volunteer while pursuing my bachelor's in engineering to provide quality education to children from the slums of Bengaluru, and soon realized this is what I would love to do. I quit my IT job after a few years and joined Azim Premji Foundation Fellowship in 2015. It was here I met Kiran, my friend and colleague who hails from Sonbhadra, Uttar Pradesh, about 130 kilometers south of Varanasi. Sonbhadra has a significant tribal population and has been in the news for over 3 decades for high infant mortality and deformities at birth due to the contamination of water with fluoride, arsenic, and mercury. Kiran was lucky to have grown up with access to art, music, and literature early in her life, which enabled her to achieve her true potential. But it is not the case for most children living in that area. To change this narrative in 2018, we co-founded Ukram Educational Foundation to work collaboratively with public schools, where through storytelling pedagogy, we bring in hope and nurture the expression of children, co-facilitate class with teachers by introducing current teaching practices to make classrooms engaging. And by building meaningful relationships with the community, we are developing a cohort of local women and youth like Priyanka, who's stoked to be an educator at the Basti, where she grew up and is facilitating Jola Library at community spaces to scaffold language development. This is how we are developing conducive spaces to strengthen the foundational language and literacy of more than 1,000 vulnerable children from underserved communities to improve their learning and life outcomes. My social entrepreneur journey did have a share of impediments, but I have also received valuable resources and guidance from individuals and groups like this distinguished audience. So I urge you to give a young social entrepreneur like me a long road, that is 3 to 5 years support, as it helps them to navigate complexity more calmly and learn from their mistakes, develop innovative contextual solutions, and find co-anchors for this unheralded journey. Corporates have been constructively working on bridging equity and social inclusion. But this cannot just stop at urban and peri-urban areas. Unless we invest in remote pockets of rural tribal areas, we cannot stop this divide. Even more now, thanks to the pandemic. Create forums to communicate unheard stories in vernaculars, be a mentor, and visit these pockets in person to understand the nuances of ground realities. Government collaboration, especially in underserved regions, is critical to bring in systemic change. The goal should be to build an ethos of co-creation and not keep it as a service delivery model. Having a platform for public school teachers to function as leaders and not just functional managers would bring them agency and dignity and elevate a sense of insecurity, which is often caused by misconception of CSOs as another layer of power rather than collaborators. National education policy has highlighted how critical teachers are to build back our education system. And we cannot lose them due to the lack of trust. Lastly, all the oi chotu, oi chutki that we call them here in the cities are the children who I work with and are the loved souls of their households. But they are not in their homes and instead have been pushed out to fend for the family with no identity nor dignity. I invite all of you to visit us and see how children thrive, irrespective of gender, ethnicity, and geography, when given access to quality opportunities. Let us not let poverty steal their childhood and build a better future together. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikhil. That was a really inspiring and beautiful overview of why you do what you do and what you need when it comes to supporting you further, especially what you said about co-creation and not seeing youth-led entrepreneurships as a service delivery model, I think is at the heart of youth centricity in achieving SDGs. So thank you for sharing that. Our next panelist is Sanjina Gupta, who is the founder and executive director of Rangeen Khirki. She's a sexual and reproductive health rights consultant, trained menstrual health facilitator, sexuality educator, and has been working in the thematic area of health and education for close to 8 years in rural Bengal, Kolkata, rural Bihar, Mumbai, and rural Maharashtra. She has planned and delivered menstrual health sessions, gender and sexuality programs, and comprehensive sexuality education trainings to multiple government schools, civil society organizations, teachers, and groups of parents. She's a feminist aspiring to create safe spaces and enabling adolescents and young people to access their rights towards their sexual and reproductive health and reach their truest potential. Over to you, Sanjina, to share your story and what you would need most from all of us to support you.
Thank you so much. Glad to be a part of this forum. Growing up as a young person, there has been a lot of incidences where accessing information about puberty, about adolescence, about growing up in general, about my body, about my rights has been difficult. I have ended up seeking information from the internet. Thank God for the internet at that point. At least there was some information available. But then, of course, that information was not accurate, was not scientific in many, many regards. There was also a lot of misconception and confusion. I've also tried seeking information from my friends and peers who were as clueless as I was at that point. And this has led me take a lot of uninformed decisions about my bodies. For example, while exploring my body, exploring my sexuality, dealing with a menstrual health condition like PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, running from pillar to post to get things fixed, and not really finding the solution, which was non-judgmental or stigma-free for that matter. And I have taken a lot of steps at that point to quote unquote again fix the problem that has led me to live with long-term consequences. As I started working in this space, I realized I was more focused on working in the space of health and education in general when I started working in the social development sector. But then over time, I started seeing the intersection of gender and sexual reproductive health and rights and how that impacts somebody's access to quality life, quality education, and dignity for that matter. And as I grew older, these connections, these intersections became more apparent. And this is where my journey started working, started as a SRHR consultant, and over time it gave birth to Rangin Khidki as well. So Rangin Khidki identifies as a youth-led feminist organization, and we work in the space of sexual reproductive health and rights with young people and adolescents, along with stakeholders. So as we were working in the SRHR space, we took a step back and we realized that when you make information and services accessible to young people, they are able to reach their fullest potential. And through this work, we have been able to create a lot of impact in the last 2 years almost. So to just take you through what we have been doing, we are present across 5 states in India at this moment, where we work with more than 30 partners in collaboration, not just with CBOs, but also government institutions. Our work currently aligns with SDGs like good health and well-being, gender equality, clean water and sanitation, reducing inequalities, sustainable cities, and definitely partnership goals. We have been able to create impact among more than, I think, 3.6 lakh young people directly, and it is just ongoing from there. We have been able to impact 80% young girls who now talk about consent more openly, who are able to make informed choices about their bodies. We have worked with more than 400 stakeholders, including parents, teachers, service providers, and educational institutes. We have seen 50% boys that we worked with talk about gender stereotypes and take a pledge that we are going to challenge these existing gender stereotypes. And of course, we have been doing a lot of COVID relief since the pandemic struck, where we have been spearheading, access to menstrual health facilities and menstrual health products in West Bengal in collaboration with Kolkata Police, West Bengal Police, and so many other CSOs. Today, as I'm here, my ask to all the esteemed attendees in this forum is to be able to create space for young people in the decision making process. Let us look at creating spaces for young people where they are heard, they are seen, and they are valued for their lived experiences. Often decision making takes place for young people where their representation is missing, but their lived realities and lived experiences are different, and sometimes not taken care of or not even recognized. So can we create spaces which are more open and accepting of young people's realities? Can we look at investing more in the work that young people do, support initiatives, collectives, movements that are led by young people, financially as well as non-financially, and last but not the least, make processes and compliances more friendly, more easier for young people, because we are often stuck with so many administrative and compliance related issues when we are leading movements, that takes up a lot of time rather than the actual work that we've been doing. And of course, I want to reiterate again the financial aspect of it as well, that our experience may not be a lot in the specific sector, but our lived experiences inform our work, and therefore we'd want that to be valued. We want equal share in our own, in decisions and policies that are taken to benefit us. So that's my ask from the entire audience over here. And also, please let us look at sexual reproductive health and rights as an important part of human rights, and let us develop an intersectional perspective when it comes to holistic development of young people. So, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sanjina. I think you do the really important and difficult work of sensitizing stakeholders and decision makers across different parts of young people's lives, and that is truly, truly commendable. And what you say in terms of mentorship and holistic development, I think, are really, really key to ensuring that young people are able to lead the conversations, the initiatives, the movements that are required to further SDGs across the country. So thank you for bringing up some really important points and the work that you do. Handing it over now, I'll quickly introduce our third panelist, Jimmy Thangjam, who is the founder of Tweak Learning, who is an engineer turned social entrepreneur leading the economic transformation of Northeast India through youth entrepreneurship. Jimmy advocates for safe and creative spaces for children and empowers youth with life skill and entrepreneurship education and training. He has received both national and international recognition at Youth Speak Chennai 2018, Startup Manipur 2019, Youth Collab 2020, and the Change Looms program with Pradhan in 2020. He recently got selected as one of the 100 global youth leaders for the Youth Delegate program organized by Unite 2030. He is also currently working as the regional mentor of change at Atal Innovation Mission under Niti Aayog in Manipur. Over to you, Jimmy.
Thank you, Anandmai, for that lovely introduction. So, without taking much time. Hi, everyone. Very good afternoon. My name is Jimmy. I'm the founder of Tweak Learning, which is a social enterprise based in Manipur, leading the economic transformation of Northeast India through youth entrepreneurship. So our work primarily focuses on providing livelihood opportunities for educated unemployed youths in the region through entrepreneurship education and training. So we contribute primarily towards 3 SDGs, SDG 1, 4, and 8. As we all understand, the Northeast region is among the most economically backward regions in India, affected by multidimensional socio-economic challenges like geographical isolation, insurgency, lack of infrastructure, and racial distinction. So along with these socio-economic challenges, there are multiple ecosystem challenges which have eventually translated to massive youth unemployment, causing this region to fall into a vicious cycle of economic poverty. So ever since I was in high school, I was always aspired to contribute towards the economic development of our region. So while I was never the smartest or the strongest, the dream to lead this economic transformation one day, it gave me the strength and motivation to persist through every failure and challenge in my life. It was also this dream that made me venture into entrepreneurship in 2017 with my admission at TIS Mumbai for Masters in Social Entrepreneurship. So my journey as a failing student to becoming an entrepreneur, it gave me the confidence that with clarity and commitment to our dreams, youth could overcome any challenge in life, including the unemployment and the economic poverty, which are significant to our region. So it was in mid-2018 when I first conducted the pilot trial of my venture, incorporating some life skills and entrepreneurship programs with about 200 high school students from the government schools and low-cost private schools. It validated the need for the alternate education as well as the requirement for entrepreneurship among students and youth. So following my post-graduation in 2019, September, we started our full-time operation as Tweak Learning with primary focus on youth entrepreneurship, wherein we integrated the concept of personal mastery, leadership, empathy, and communications alongside the business management skills within our entrepreneurship as a life skill curriculum. So COVID was definitely a huge challenge. However, in the last 2 years of our operation, with a small team of 3 persons, we have been able to impact over thousands of youth in our region with our initiatives. Personally, we have trained and mentored over 130 unemployed educated youths, and which has resulted in creation or remodeling of over 40 micro enterprises. And we aspire to create at least 100 micro enterprises by the end of financial year 2021. So it is our mission to create 1,000 entrepreneurs, at least 10,000 jobs, and contribute at least $1 billion to the Northeast region economy by 2025. So taking the opportunity of this esteemed platform, on behalf of the youths of Northeast region, I would like to request two urgent support from the panels and the audience that would help us leverage the youth entrepreneurial ecosystem in our region. So my first ask is, our region is at a very nascent stage of entrepreneurship. So most of the youths, including myself, are first generation entrepreneurs, where most ideas and ventures, primarily it falls under MSMEs. So therefore, grants and loans have been the most popular form of funding. The government and the private sectors both have done commendable work in supporting the creation of micro enterprises. However, despite the availability of multiple financial institutions in our region, most aspiring entrepreneurs still continue to face challenges with financial assistance in terms of timely availability and accessibility, unlike other states outside the Northeast region, which demotivates them in their entrepreneurial pursuit. So through these existing financial institutions or new, if we could please devise an easy automated financial accessibility system wherein aspiring entrepreneurs could automatically and conveniently avail at least the seed fund without having to go through any manual formalities. So that would be my first ask. The second ask is to efficiently utilize the available primary resources in our region. We need more manufacturing units. However, procuring machines and setting up factories is a huge infrastructural investment which may not be feasible for young entrepreneurs. So can we please make some arrangement to provide us with the relevant machineries and set up manufacturing units which could be rented and which could be accessed affordably by aspiring entrepreneurs? And we, Tweak Learning, also would be proud to lend our support to both government and private sector lenders towards building this what I've mentioned, the financial and the infrastructure support for the youths in our region. So that is all that I'm asking in this panel. Thank you again for this wonderful opportunity.
Thank you, Jimmy, for sharing your work. Your impact is impressive, especially in the context of engaging most marginalized young people and children who are usually left behind. And the goals that you have set are quite aspirational, and I'm quite confident you'll be able to reach them. I think what you say when it comes to access to resources, whether financial or in kind, and the timely dissemination of those resources are really, really key to supporting young entrepreneurs and ensuring that they're not stalled in their efforts as they do want to work towards creating jobs, facilitating education, creating awareness on different issues. So thank you for flagging that. I'll quickly introduce our last panelist, Richa Gupta, who is the founder of Labhya Foundation. Richa is an educator and social entrepreneur and has founded Labhya, which is a globally recognized Indian nonprofit that enables 2.5 million children from low socioeconomic backgrounds with the necessary skills to cope with the ill effects of poverty and become lifelong learners through social emotional learning programs at scale. Richa has received her master's in education from the Harvard Graduate School of Education, where she also served as an Equity and Inclusion Fellow, Harvard Ministerial Leadership Fellow, and Education Entrepreneurship Fellow. Currently, Richa also serves on the advisory board of Yuva, UNICEF India, and the steering committee of Karanga, the Global Alliance for Social Emotional Learning and Life Skills. Over to you, Richa, to share your journey.
Thank you so much, Anandmay, and thank you so much to all the speakers who have spoken before me. I think this is the power of young people, so I will not challenge that and I will not repeat that. I think we have good examples of how it's done. Before I introduce my journey, I think it's important that you understand what it's like to be one of the children that we work with. And I'm going to share with you a story about one of my students, Suman. Suman is a 5th grader, and when I met her, she believed that she's destined to become a sweeper just like her mother. Suman comes from a household income of less than $2 a day, and she's considered vulnerable and at risk as per any and all global standards. Poverty causes her to face extreme emotional distress and unique vulnerabilities, and this distress defines her reality. I met Suman when I was a teacher. She inspired me to pursue a career in education right when I was 16 years old. Currently, there are 128 million children facing similar challenges as Suman, and the school system in our country is failing our children in this way. We are failing to provide schools and resources to our children wherein they can develop the essential skills to enable their growth and well-being. And so we fail our children on a daily basis. But this distress can be overcome by social emotional learning, like Anandmay shared, an education best practice that can enable children to develop positive mental health, a greater sense of personal respect, pursuing higher education, and increased employability. We at Labhya Foundation partner and enable Indian state governments to integrate a daily social emotional learning class across all public schools of the state. To do this, we provide end-to-end support to our government partners through 4 key offerings: localized curriculum, teacher capacity building, evaluation support, and administrative support. So in the same way that our children have a science or a math or a physics class, our children now have a happiness class that consists of reflective stories, activities, and mindfulness. Labhya has co-created and is ensuring effective implementation of one of the world's largest at-scale social emotional learning interventions, like the Delhi government's happiness curriculum. Currently, Labhya works and impacts with about 2.5 million children, like Anandmay mentioned. Our classes are being run because of our government partners across 22,000 government schools across India in partnership with 3 state governments, Delhi, Uttarakhand, and Tripura. An external evaluation of one of our programs by Boston Consulting Group shows that our children are actively demonstrating emotional resilience, better relationship skills, and increased learning interests. Labhya has been fortunate to gather support and partnerships through global organizations, and our classrooms have been visited by eminent personalities, including His Holiness the Dalai Lama. My team is co-led by Vedant, who co-founded his first startup at the age of 17, Malika, a chartered accountant, and myself, a recent graduate from Harvard Graduate School of Education. Like Anandmay mentioned, I also have the opportunity to serve on the advisory board of Yuva India. And we are supported by our board members, Mr. Samit Ghosh and Harpreet Singh Grover. So where is Suman today? Suman is still in school today. She's in a higher grade, and she's advocating for her education at home with her parents. She's making informed career decisions, and she's becoming resilient as a young person. You can support us scale our program through government partners across 10 million children by 2023. As a young person leading a young youth-led team, I understand how systems work. I know how to co-create with you, and I understand what it takes to co-create with each other. So all the partners who are in the audience today, please hold our hands, co-create with us. We are here, and more importantly, visit one of our partner states. You pick the school, and we'll take you to a happiness class, and you will know what it takes to build resilience amongst children. So come and let's try to reinvent the education system together. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Richa. I think every time I hear incredible youth entrepreneurs like I heard today, I'm just determined to create more spaces and opportunities together to have you lead us to a brighter future. But I'll just echo what Richa said for everyone listening in. If you can, please do step in and see the work that these youth leaders are doing, so you can understand exactly what it takes and how we can support them moving ahead. I'll hand over now to Richa Kalra to introduce Mr. Reddy for the Fireside Chat.
Thank you so much, Anandmay. It is really a great discussion that I have been listening to. Very interesting, amazing conversations with youth leaders, youth entrepreneurs, which shed a good deal of light on the challenges they're facing, achievements they've had, and scope of expansion that they see in their domains. And Richa Gupta rightly said that how we all need to work together, and especially in the education sector, to help realize the young dreams. So now it's the time for us to move ahead, and I would like to introduce Mr. B.V.R. Mohan Reddy, founder, chairman, and board member, Scient, and also member of the Yuva Advisory Board. He's an eminent founder chairman of, as founder chairman, B.V.R. Mohan Reddy acts as a sounding board, mentor, and critique in the spirit of enabling sustainable growth, especially in matters related to strategy, values, policy, CSR, and government relations, involved in leadership development, innovation, information systems, and corporate social responsibility. Mr. Mohan Reddy founded Scient in 1991 with the goal of providing engineering services to global markets. Let's give a good round of applause to Mr. B.V.R. Mohan Reddy for this fireside chat.
Thank you, Richa.
So maybe I'll quickly just thank you again, Mr. Reddy, for joining us for this conversation, and really just acknowledging that this is a really important moment for us to be able to talk about how we can support young people when lead the way when it comes to positive change. Your extensive experience in both the private sector and government, I know, will offer rich insights into the role that can be played in supporting young people. So maybe let's begin a little bit by hearing about your journey and learnings and working closely with Yuva, where you've been generous enough to give us your time and again, and why you think it's important to have a platform like Yuva, which centers young people in all of its initiatives.
Thank you, Anandmay. Thank you for inviting me to this forum this evening. At the outset, let me congratulate Nikhil, Sanjina, Richa, and Jimmy for the outstanding work they have done so far. I keep saying this, that I am past. I'm sure you all can see that on the screen. But what I see in front of me is my future. The fact, the passion that with which they have talked about their initiatives, the commitment with which they've taken them forward, in spite of the fact they have hurdles, makes me believe that my future is safe, especially when I see those shining eyes and smiling faces. So first, congratulations to the team. And certainly Yuva had a role to play in make them what they are today. I think we gave every possible support. And in a very larger perspective, the mission of Yuva has been that three things that we wanted to establish. One is to make sure that we could create job paths for people, we can't create jobs, but we can certainly create the job paths for them to start improve on the awareness of where the jobs are, what the skills are required, and so on and so forth. The second one is provide this mentorship support to them. And the third one is bring youth leadership. And all these three counts, in spite of the fact that, we have been somewhat handicapped. I'm not using it as a defensive mode because of the pandemic. I think we have gone a long way in making sure that initiatives like the Young Warriors, the YPAT, and also the Youth Innovation Challenge during the pandemic, all of them have established that Yuva has started playing a very active role, a role which certainly means that we are making an impact. The key thing about Yuva is involvement of the youth itself. You won't see many organizations where we would have Yuva also as a part of the advisory board. For that matter, this morning on apprenticeship working group, we have a small committee that was created. Again, we made sure the youth whom it impacts are also a part of the team. So what we are seeing at this point of time as initiatives of Yuva is certainly creating the impact. Can it be better? Certainly, yes. I think as we move forward, as we have learnings from what we have done so far, and as life becomes much better, I believe that Yuva will make stronger impact in coming quarters and months and years.
Absolutely, I completely agree. And maybe I'm a bit biased, but I definitely think we do have the potential with the support of the private and public sector to create immense impact with young people at the center of it. I'm curious to know how, because you mentioned the youth advisory especially and how they do contribute to the thought leadership within Yuva's ecosystem. But how do you think we can hold them and the other stakeholders accountable when it comes to bringing young people to the decision-making table? So the private, the public, and our youth partners accountable in this new equation.
Thank you, Admai, for that question. See, we have all to recognize this is a voluntary organization. So accountable could be a stronger statement to say, we probably have to make them responsible. They have to feel that they are responsible to what they're doing today. Because any of these initiatives, you look at the SDG goals, what we intend to do by 2030, it's all to make a better place for all of us. It includes me too. I'm not outside that particular area. So the result is we have to bring in that responsibility into the minds of whether it's government, whether it's private, or with the youth, to say we all need to contribute to make this a better place. Certainly, I think one is to say a slogan to say, make yourself responsible. But I think one other way of doing it is, can we therefore set some goals for every year and see that those goals can be established? I think a good example was, I think we just now heard our young friend, Jimmy, who talked about creating 1,000 enterprises in Northeast, or 10,000 jobs, or $1 billion of revenue. So these are, did somebody tell Jimmy to have these numbers? No, they're self-imposed goals that he has set for himself. That's, to me, is called responsibility. People take the responsibility, and they're also self-motivating people. I think that if you create the right levels of awareness, they get self-motivated to say, we need to achieve those goals. I think events of this nature is another way of making sure that people have become more responsible. Because, what we have done is pulled out there could be 400 stories, 4,000 stories, 4 of them. And we are now recognizing them and also celebrating the process. So a consequence of all these things together, that is in making sure that people, self-motivating people are brought to bear, involve them in the decision-making processes, will make sure that we will have higher levels of involvement from the youth. It's a voluntary stuff. Therefore, the more amount of awareness that we create, youth will automatically come. And there's a crying need for it. I'm sure the numbers are very staggering at this point of time. 300 million youth in this country. But in addition to that, there are about 15 million who come into the system every year in asking for employment. So therefore, it becomes extremely responsible thereafter for all of us, every citizen, every society, whether it's government, public, NGOs, and so on and so forth, to make sure these people are properly educated, they're skilled, and we create enough of employment for them, either through direct employment or through an entrepreneurship. And all these counts, I guess, youth will have a very important role to play. And that's what we have seen with 4 of our role models right now.
Absolutely, I agree. I think if there is one thing we can do, it is capacitate the young people so they are able to competently participate in and contribute to the spaces that we open up to them. But yeah, definitely thank you for highlighting that important point, as well as the need for them to own the agenda as much as they can so that they can shape it exactly how they want to, and contribute to this larger vision of positive change that we keep talking about. You mentioned Jimmy, and you mentioned like the passion and the motivation of the young entrepreneurs. And listening to them, I've realized that recognition of their leadership and experiences, financial support, and in-kind mentorship are essential components of supporting youth-led entrepreneurs, as you've also briefly touched upon. But how can the private sector and government come together to provide this kind of support that is essential for the nurturing of young people's work and their journeys?
I think one could talk about in the standalone mode what the government is doing in terms of promoting the youth entrepreneurship. And there are several of them, but what comes to my mind, I'll call out just 3 of them. One is the Pradhan Mantri Mudra Yojana. Certainly, I think, it's a system by which a micro enterprise can survive and get a loan of 10 lakhs without a collateral, because not all businesses require larger sums of money. And the fact that, there are variants of it, the Sishu or Kishore or Tarun, several of them, is one way of promoting youth entrepreneurship, whether they want to create something which is very new. Except that I would always say that the youth has to also look at 2 other things which are at play right now. People say, can I start a small little shop in the corner of the street? You can, you should. But make sure that you innovate your idea. Innovation has to be a key driver for us, which of course goes back to changing of our education system, the way in which we learn, and so on and so forth. But unless the idea becomes innovative, it's not a sustainable idea. Somebody else can copy it, somebody can walk into it, and so on and so forth. And the second one is that today the technology is at a play which has never been experienced by mankind for centuries together. The acceleration and amplification of technology in every sphere of life. It doesn't matter whether it is in agriculture, it is in consumer products, it is in healthcare, it's in education, and so on and so forth. So therefore, what we need to do is these young entrepreneurs, with small ones that they can think about, but don't just copy something else which is there. It has to definitely be something unique. So that is one thing that I like to call out. The second one is the government also has for the vulnerable, marginalized groups, especially the people who are today not so well recognized in the society, is the Women Entrepreneurship Platform. It's called the WEP program of Niti Aayog, which certainly provides more amount of support to women alone. And that is a big movement that we're seeing. I live in the city of Hyderabad. The local government has created something called the V-Hub, which is just for women entrepreneurs. So therefore, promoting them is yet another thing that the government is doing. And the last thing that I'll call out from the government perspective is the Atal incubation centers that they are now all around the country. And the fact that they're also providing 10 crores of loan over a period of 5 years for the startup community. So there are a number of initiatives that the government has put in place. I belong to a generation where finding money was the most difficult thing. I started my enterprise in 1992, where venture capital was a word which was not found anywhere around. We still found ways and means which could be done. I think there's enough money, there's plenty of money at this point of time. The key thing is you need to have that unique idea. You need to have a solution which is distinctively different from others. You should have a large marketplace, and then you can scale. So that's what I think the mantra is in terms of finding the funds for people. From the private sector, I guess, there are two aspects of it. All of us, whether it was the mandatory requirement of government CSR, 2% of our profits, or even before that, I think a number of people have come forward in terms of supporting the entrepreneurial capabilities of people. We'll continue to do that, whether it is supporting entrepreneur or social entrepreneurship, or certainly directly going and handling some of the initiatives that are required. I think the key thing is working with the youth is the key driver for us. And we certainly are, in many instances, I think the challenge we have in the country is there's enormous amount of need in a number of areas. Youth is one of the important ones, without any denying. So we will continue to work with youth too, with all these programs, to make sure they get empowered to ensure that we build the future India. And so therefore, there's a fairly large amount of involvement. It's more amount of cooperation and coordination between the three stakeholders we just now called out is very important.
Thank you, Mr. Reddy. I think absolutely innovation, especially with technological progress, we're seeing it exponentially. Every year there are like 10 different things that are happening and more, is really key to encouraging progress as well as sustaining ventures. And I think what you say about the schemes and what you say about encouraging young people to think innovatively has a lot to do with plugging information gaps as well. And specifically focusing on most marginalized identities so that their needs and their ideas are bolstered and supported as well. And your experience in the government and private sector certainly is reflected in how you approach this, for sure. But I think when it comes to working with young people, you have been very, very vocal about supporting their leadership and advocating for their leadership. But how do you think we can bring more players like you into this conversation and help them see value in partnering directly with young people, just as you have?
I have a strong belief good work will attract more people into the initiatives that we have put in place. So therefore, I think the fact that we have showcased 4 of them today, as I said, we have 4,000 of them behind. As we start doing some work, and then as we start showcasing them, there are a number of more people who are like-minded like me, but they're not aware of the work that's being done. To me, to attract talent into philanthropy, good-natured time, because I think one thing that we also have to accept is bringing in the corporate world into the social responsibilities at this point of time. Bring in 2 other things which are not so obvious. We of course bring the money part of it, the funding part. That's one which is very obvious. Not so obvious is that we bring those systems and processes that work so well in the private sector organizations to ensure that we all achieve our goals. The second one, which is very important, is that we also bring fairly large amount of volunteerism into these social initiatives. In a company like ours, we employ about 15,000 people. Today, 1,000 of our employees go to schools which we have adopted, and they spend 2 hours a week. And if you now sum total the cost of that 2 hours for 1,000 people in a week, you would then come to an estimate that it is as good as the money that we spend on our CSR itself. So the story is that you have to do good work, and automatically the rest of the people will follow. Stories of this nature, that what we have seen with our 4 startup entrepreneurs, have to be vocalized. They have to be celebrated. They have to be recognized. That is when we will see more amount of people saying, "Oh no, we need to join hands to ensure that we all will make this world much better place, and the SDG 2030 are met. If not met, we will be ahead of them."
Thank you, Ms. Reddy. Completely echo what you say. My favorite part of my job is definitely celebrating the incredible youth leaders that we have had the fortune of interacting with and working with within Yuva. And I definitely think treating them as the leaders that they are instead of the beneficiaries that we often mistakenly place them in the position of is really the way to move ahead. So thank you. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you to the other speakers and panelists as well.
Thank you, Anandamayi. I like to assure our young friends that I made notes of what their asks were. So we will echo them further and we'll keep in touch with you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Reddy, for your words of wisdom, sharing your insights and experience with the young entrepreneurs. You rightly said good attracts good. And I would also like to give a very warm word of thanks to Anandamayi, who steered this discussion so very well. Thank you so much, Anandamayi, and also the youth leaders. You've achieved a lot, but there's a long road ahead. Wish you all the best, and I hope this discussion solves some of your asks. With this, we slip into a short break. But before we move into the break, let me tell you there's lots more coming up before we wrap this national convention, many special addresses, and we would also be having many guests, special guests, some business leaders, some very special names from the government. So stay with us in the later part of this national convention. And before we slip into the break, I would like to remind all our attendees and participants that do explore different facets of this national convention virtually. There are many corporate stalls, exhibitions to be visited, and there is a selfie point as well where you can click your selfie and post it online. Thank you so much for being with us so far. We hope you stay with us after the break as well and participate in this ongoing, engaging and informative discussions.